For a minute, I can almost imagine people playing on this ground way back in the day. But then again, maybe not. Hello, and welcome to the Vagabond channel. We're on our way to the Harry Trott Oval, back in the day called the Back Creek Oval. We're going to have a look at Harry Boyle and his time with the Bendigo United Cricket Club. But before we get there, I'll just tell you a little bit about the Oval. It came into being in 1861 when what we nowadays call Rosalind Park was being turned basically into park with gravel paths and flower beds. One of those involved in the creation of the Oval was a chap called James Boyle Thompson, and he was one of the guys who actually codified Australian rules football. He was an interesting fella. He was a bit of a ne'er-do-well. He was a journalist, very good cricket player, but he also liked to drink, and I think that was his ruin. And he spent a few years here in Bendigo working for the Bendigo Addy before he moved to Ballarat and eventually back to Melbourne, where he died in 1877. But here we are at the Oval. I'm just going to park up and we'll have a wander around, and I'll tell you a little bit about Harry Boyle's playing days with the BUCCs. It's a bonny winter's day here at the Harry Trott Oval, or as I should say, the Back Creek Oval, which is what its original name was, starting from back in 1861-62. One thing I like about this oval is that there might be a blade or two of grass, or certainly some soil, that came from the Jolimont ground of the East Melbourne Cricket Club. It was reported that following the demolition of the Jolimont Oval, the committee had sent soil to Bendigo, to the Bendigo United Cricket Club, and that soil would be used to create a wicket in memory of Harry Boyle and Jack Harry, who'd both played for Bendigo United and for the East Melbourne Club. Of course, on this oval, some of the great cricket players of the Victorian era played, and of course perhaps the greatest player of the age played here in 1874, W.G. Grace. It was certainly during that tour in 1874 that Grace formed, I guess, a good acquaintance and even a friendship with Harry Boyle and Dave Scott, Boyle's friend. The Oval played host to all visiting cricket tours, starting in 1862 with H.H. Stevenson's tour. Cricket tours back then, Australian and English, were business ventures, and many teams visited Bendigo for the gold. There was lots of money here, so touring teams, the English teams, would always come here, and from December 1877 the Australian tourists would always come. So just ahead here you can see the nice new pavilion that's been built to host the Bendigo United Cricket Club and the South Bendigo Football Netball Club. Absolutely cracking building, and I think it can be used for functions and whatnot as well. When I recorded the video here at the ground, I forgot that in the car I had a Bendigo United Cricket Club cap that I wanted to wear to show a bit of respect for the cricket club and Harry Boyle. So I've come back to do a wee bit more recording. Now, as I mentioned in the video out at Woodvale, Sydney Flat, the first mention I could find of Boyle playing for the BUCCs was in November 1864. And I don't think he played many, if any, other games that year. But the next mention I could find of him was him playing in a practice game. This was mentioned in the Addy at the start of the 1865 season. It said of Boyle, he shows good batting technique and his fielding skills are top-notch as well. Something like that anyway. Sorry, I'm batting against a leaf blower. They've been cutting the grass and cleaning up the oval after a footy game was played here yesterday. But it's a nice day, so I thought I'd get the recording done anyway. Now, 3 weeks later, the Addy reported that Boyle also promises to be a very good acquisition in terms of bowling. He bowls right arm, round arm, with good pace, and with practice he should excel. I think that's a bit of foreshadowing for his later career. The 1865-1866 season was Boyle's first full season with the BUCCs. And somewhere up here, I think you should see his figures during the years he played with the BUCCs. And as well, I've marked out Billy Midwinter's figures, who played at quite a few of the same years as Boyle did. Between 1865 and 1871-72, Boyle clearly continued to develop as a cricketer, and his skills and ability were spotted by the East Melbourne Cricket Club. And I'll read to you here what A.E. Clarke wrote in his history of the EMCC. The season of 1871-72 is further noteworthy for the advent of Boyle. Clarke explains how Boyle distinguished himself in a Colts match for East Melbourne and then played for the country districts. He wrote, "The Bendigonian was immediately spotted by Messrs Wardle, Hammersley and Wilkie, and after another good performance at Geelong, this time in the ranks of the EMCC, was placed in the Victorian 11, where he amply justified his selection." So I think from 1871-72, at the weekends, Boyle would travel back and forth to Melbourne to play for the EMCC. And of course in April 1874, when he obtained a job with the mines department, he moved down to Melbourne permanently. Of course, in December 1873, when Boyle was still playing for the Bendigo United, came one of the most noteworthy efforts in his career, when he was the first man to bowl W.G. Grace on Australian soil. He was playing for 18 of Victoria against Grace's 11. And obviously he travelled down from Bendigo to play in that game. And I'll read to you what his great friend Dave Scott, the Almanac, wrote about that, and said, "Myself and Harry were watching Grace practicing the day before the game, and Harry said to me that he believed Grace has a weak stroke on the leg, and if I could only get the ball in between leg and wicket, I think I could get him." On the second day of the match, Boyle got his chance to test that theory. The world's champion played an over or two of the Bendigonian quietly, and apparently thinking he had got his measure, commenced to play more freely. Boyle, however, had been plugging away, and with a faster ball than usual, with a slight break from leg, he beat the champion and clean bowled his middle stump. Never was there such a scene on the ground. The excitement was terrific, not only amongst the spectators, but also amongst the players. And I think bowling Grace really established Harry's fame in Victoria. So I think What we'll do now is head over to the Kangaroo Flat ground where Boyle played football for Sandhurst, and we'll talk a little bit about Boyle's time as a football player. It would actually be nice to see the Bendigo Council put up some sort of placard recognising the history of the Oval and some of the great players who played on here in the early days, including Harry Trott, of course, who the Oval's now named for. Up there you should see some information about some of the famous early players who played here. So here we are at the Kangaroo Flat Oval. The weather's changed a little bit, as you can see, a bit cloudy now. And we're here, we'll have a talk about Boyle's time as a footballer, playing for Sandhurst. I think back in 1872 and 1873, when Harry Boyle played for Sandhurst, the goals would have looked different to what people are used to in Australian rules nowadays. Rather than the 4 posts, I think there was just the 2 posts with flags on them. And the crowd sometimes would actually encroach onto the field as well. There's certainly newspaper reports to that effect. Not here in Bendigo, or Sandhurst as it was called then, but down in Melbourne. Now, just before we deal with Harry Boyle, I should point out that back in those days, whilst the metropolitan teams such as Melbourne and Carlton, for example, would have their fixtures, the club secretaries would meet and set up the fixture list for the season. In country areas such as Bendigo/Sandhurst, the challenges would be issued sometimes to a metropolitan team, but also to other country towns such as Castlemaine, and clubs didn't play many fixtures at all. So let's get to Harry Boyle. Boyle played for the Sandhurst Football Club during the 1872 and 1873 seasons. The Sandhurst football team was formed on the 3rd of June 1861. One of the founding members, of course, was James Boyne Thompson. The team existed for a couple of years and then fell dormant until 1872, when it was brought back to life. At that time, a series of scratch matches were played to pick members of the team. And this is the first time that Harry Boyle is mentioned in relation to the Sandhurst football team. The scratch matches were played on the camp reserve, and a report in the Bendigo Advertiser of May the 8th, 1872 mentions Boyle, along with a chap called F.C. Liddell, who would go on to be the captain of the Sandhurst team, was mentioned playing for the bankers and brokers in the scratch match. Obviously his form was good enough that he went on to play for the Sandhurst team. The Bendigo Advertiser of 9th May, reporting on the scratch match, stated, "It was an exciting game and a large crowd of spectators attended. The report recorded that the bankers and brokers were led by Boyle, who was a tower of strength in himself." Another scratch match took place on Wednesday the 12th of June, Fuller and Liddell choosing the sides. Boyle was noted as one of those who distinguished themselves for athletic valour. The following Saturday, the Sandhurst Football Club played what the Bendigo Advertiser called a regular match, when the first 15 played the next 30. The article mentioned Boyle as a member of the Sandhurst team. Now, while scratch matches or practice matches appear to have been played at the camp reserve, proper games appear to have been played here at the Kangaroo Flat Cricket/football ground. And this is where the first proper game of the Sandhurst team was played. On Monday, the 1st of July 1872, the Sandhurst team played the first 20 of the South Yarra Football Club here on the Kangaroo Flat Oval. Boyle's fine play for the Sandhurst team when they played South Yarra was commented upon by the Bendigo Advertiser. The game against South Yarra resulted in a victory for South Yarra by 1-0. Different scoring system back then, it would appear. Sandhurst's next game was against Melbourne, and Boyle's gallant play was commented upon. That game also resulted in a 1-0 loss for Sandhurst. Over the next few weeks, Sandhurst played a 20-a-side match against the Foundry Football Club. Following the game against the Foundry Football Club, Sandhurst was to play a game against Castlemaine, but this was postponed. In August of 1872, the Sandhurst team played their last couple of games for the 1872 season. On August the 22nd, Sandhurst played against 20 of the Banks. I assume that means the Banks in Sandhurst. And the final game of the season, I think, was played down in Kyneton. Boyle didn't play in that game, and apparently Sandhurst suffered a terrible thrashing. Sandhurst only seemed to have played 3 games in 1873, 1 against Melbourne and 2 against Kyneton. Boyle was named in the team to play Melbourne and in the team for the second game against Kyneton. Although in the actual match reports there's no mention of him. Of course, in April 1874, Boyle moved to Melbourne, and in the 1874 season would go on to play for the Carlton Football Club. At some future stage, I hope to deal with Boyle's time in Melbourne, playing football for Carlton, as well as, of course, his cricket, which was the most important thing, playing for the East Melbourne Cricket Club. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll have a look at some of my other videos in the future, and we'll hope to see you again. Thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe.